Hi Dom, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you? Sorry for the crazy hair, but I haven't had a haircut for seems like decades.
No, I know it's been a long time, hasn't it? Is that the first thing that you're looking forward to after lockdown?
Oh, there's so many things. We could fill the whole hour with that, couldn't we?
We definitely could. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can see a few of your see the slides that you've put together for.
You're going to do the slides, yeah? Great.
I'll do the slides and we'll be able
Cool.
to see them that way. But first of all, if you could just give me a bit of a background about kind of your previous career. I know it's very, very varied, so it's going to be really interesting for our viewers to hear more about you.
Yeah, long and winding road I've had, like the Beatles song. I'm on my fourth career or my fifth career. You can see with the grey hair that maybe all those changes have taken it out of me. Certainly having young babies in lockdown have taken it out of me a bit. So my name's Dominic Laurie. As of last year, I'm the head of communications and campaigns at TalkTalk, based in Soapworks in Salford. And what I do is I basically look after communications, not the brand stuff, not the commercial stuff, not like, buy our broadband for 20 quid a month or whatever, but it's more like the company's reputation, some of the stock market comms, communicating about diversity, about the environment, about our reputation, using our CEO, Tristia, our LinkedIn platform, I look after that. So it's kind of nothing to do with what we stand for as a company. That's what I look after. And more of that is social media and creative content. Long time ago, you would have been almost entirely media relations. But now it's a lot to do with creating content. And that's fun. That's great. And it's what I used to do at the BBC. So I was a business presenter and reporter for 10, 12 years, based amazingly coincidentally for a few years, just a few hundred meters up the canal in Media City. The new buildings up there, which are a great place to work. So that's where I was. I was on BBC Breakfast and 5 Live. I sat on the red couch at 6 in the morning doing those business reports, needing a huge amount of makeup to make me look vaguely human at 6 or 5 in the morning. So I did that, and before that I worked in marketing. So I worked in brand management. That's what I did after uni. Slightly ironically, my first thing I looked after was a brand of diet crisps called Go Ahead. I don't know if you ever heard of them, in the green packaging. I don't know if they're still around. I think they are still around. So I looked after sort of the packaging and the promotions for that. And I've also been an English teacher in the past as well. And also I've taught journalism at UCE or UCE as it was, University of Birmingham, in Birmingham. So I've done lots and lots of different things, and that's one thing I would encourage you. You can do lots of different things. We are people with skills that translate across lots of different things. I was chatting to one of our senior tech people the other day, a fantastic woman called Jen Mossop-Scott. She is second in command of tech at TalkTalk, so she really knows her onions. She started out with an arts degree, and then she did neuroscience, and then did tech.
Wow.
And she says that it's about how you think, first of all, but it's also about bringing different things. Mm-hmm. So I was a business reporter for 10 years. I've never studied business. I was entirely self-taught. My dad was an accountant, so I got a bit from him. But I started out a year before in the business unit at the BBC, a year before the financial crisis hit, which was a crazy, complicated event. Mm-hmm. And my thing was, I thought, oh my goodness, at the beginning, I thought, I'm not an expert. I'm going to get found out. But then I quickly realized that I just needed to find out what the general punter wanted to know. So I sort of, stood in the shower in the morning or on the tube on the way to work or whatever when I was in London. I was thinking, what do I have to understand? And if I don't understand it, Mrs. Miggins in Scunthorpe High Street isn't going to understand it.
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, maybe my job is actually being an outsider and trying to explain things. So again, it's a roundabout way of saying, you can be lots of different things in life, and you've got skills that will translate into lots of areas, and you can bring what makes you special so that you can do that job in lots of different ways. The other person would do the job differently. It doesn't mean it's any better or any worse. It's just not them, and you're
And how
you.
did you ensure that you were still relatable to that Mrs. Miggins in Scunthorpe? How did you ensure that you could have that relatable kind of aspect to them?
Constantly checking what I'm thinking and what I'm saying.
Okay.
Have I just said something that's ridiculous and jargon filled? If so, go back, understand it, Dominic. It generally means when something is jargon filled or is not relatable to, it generally means that the journalist doesn't understand it.
Okay.
So what they do is they throw all sorts of complicated words and et cetera at it. It generally means they haven't done the hard work in understanding and explaining something in very simple terms. Because if you can explain something very simply, it means you understand it. If you can't, it means you don't understand it, or you're just being annoying, but generally it means that you don't understand it. So I would encourage everybody in whatever field you want to go into is be relentlessly curious so that you find out what it is that the thing, the complicated thing, you just keep, okay, I don't understand, excuse me, can you just tell me? I'm sorry. I don't understand what you're saying, so that you finally understand it, so then you can explain it. That's what makes not just a good journalist, but I think it makes people effective in all sorts of walks of life. Every job needs somebody that asks the stupid question at the back of the room.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. If we get started, I think I would love to hear about your career right from the beginning. So if we could kind of talk more about kind of TalkTalk as itself, and then we'll get right into career right from the beginning when you were a little boy. But I'd love to hear more about TalkTalk and how it can kind of impact our students and our student viewers as well.
Yeah. So I'd love to see you all, but I'm sorry I can't see your face, but I'm just imagining you're there. A bit like when I was radio presenting. You can never see, or TV presenting, you can't see your audience. It's a real shame. Similar here. But I'm sure you've seen TalkTalk Soapworks in Exchange Quay. It's a great building, and you probably know this already, but the reason why it's called Soapworks is it was a Palmolive soap factory.
I didn't know that.
In that building, they used to make soap. That's why it's called Soapworks. And actually, there are people who work with us who have, like, their gran or their mum or their aunt is old enough that actually they used to work in the building. So it's quite sweet. There are actually people whose older relatives worked in the building doing something totally different. But that's where we are. We were London-based. We moved to Salford in 2019. Mm-hmm. And 2,000 people now in the building. What we do is we concentrate on broadband, essentially, and TV packages. But what we're essentially is a connectivity company. What makes us different is we pride ourselves on being affordable. So we stick up for the little guy, if you want. We want to be able to offer broadband as affordably as we can, which is really important right now because broadband is incredibly important for everybody to keep in touch with the outside world. So as we said, this is grabbed from our website. We think that broadband should be simple, affordable, reliable, and fair. That's what it is. So that's essentially, we used to do mobile phones, as you can guess from the name of our company, but we offer like affiliate deals with O2, but that's kind of not what our main thing is connectivity. And the big thing for us over the next few years and months is full fiber. So that's the biggest change in this industry for years. Is at the moment you're lucky if you get like 50 megabytes or 100. Now full fiber means you get a gigabyte, so that's 1,000 megabytes. What that means is you can download a film in 2 seconds. That'd be amazing. I mean, it totally changes what you can do.
Yeah.
And it means that you can really have, multimedia at home. So that's our big project, if you want, over the next few years, is that's going to be rolled out across the country, and we will be selling that to our customers and making our customers very happy. Fingers crossed. One thing we're doing recently, 50 jobs on people on UC in the Northwest, that's a Kickstart scheme. So we just opened up Kickstart. So we're going to be taking 50 people, 50 placements. We also have lots of apprentices, and we recruit. So as a sector, we've carried on recruiting throughout the pandemic because we're a vital national critical infrastructure company. So that's really been great. It's great to be working for a company that is important, has connected up Nightingale hospitals and vaccination centres, and just kept allowed people's businesses and schooling to carry on going when other people have had such a tough time.
Yeah, and especially with kind of the lockdown and how we've really had to kind of use the Wi-Fi as much as we can, and we've been working from home and students have been learning from home. Have you found that the specific projects at TalkTalk that you maybe had in the pipeline for 2020 had to be pushed aside for different projects because of the lockdown and the pandemic?
No, same projects had to be sped up.
Oh, okay.
So the main thing for us is always about making our network as reliable as possible. It's got to stand up, and basically, if you go onto our website, you can see some data that we released just at the end of last week, which is called Internet Insights. It's the second volume of our report. It basically gives you a look into what our customers were doing throughout 2020. It's quite interesting. It's just on the TalkTalk group website, not the consumer website, but the TalkTalk group website. And it shows that data usage rose by 40% over the year. So imagine you're an electricity provider and people start using 40% more electricity every year. You're going, oh my goodness, how am I going to provide all this electricity? So we had to find a way of providing essentially 40% more product, at the same reliability, and even when it's actually sometimes hard to go out the door, etc. We had to carry on being reliable and also affordable. So we didn't raise our prices. So that the main thing was just is what our tech guys say, sort of building lanes on the motorway. We had to sort of carry on building more and more lanes on the motorway to allow people's use to continue.
Yeah.
And the really interesting thing is that, it used to be that people used the internet a lot at work and then came home not so much, but now obviously people are working a lot from home. The people who are home workers, obviously a lot of people aren't. And now our busiest time is like 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. because people are still doing a bit of work, but they're streaming films, they're watching Amazon Prime football. That's a new thing this year. Like Amazon Prime doing like 5 football matches all at the same time, hoovering up bandwidth. I'm in a road, I can see people working over there. It's like 4 people in the window in different flats. They would previously have been in an office. So they're all hoovering up the capacity. So that's what we were doing, is making sure our network was resilient and planning the rollout of this full gigabit fiber. What that will involve is your pavement being dug up. So the service you have at the moment is quite likely to be a copper wire to your door, so fiber to the green thing on the green box down at your street end, and then a copper wire to your door. The full fiber will be a full fiber cable being laid all the way, literally, up your front steps. And when it happens, it'll be a pain, but it means you'll be able to watch whatever you like and do whatever you like. And you can run a software gaming studio from your house if you wanted to.
Brilliant. I'm very excited because my internet's not been great working from home. So I'm excited to be able to stream a film in 2 seconds. I'm looking forward to it.
Hope it comes to you soon.
So I really want to hear kind of more about your very varied career. So I know you sent me this photo, which I absolutely love. I love the hair. It's very similar to the haircut that you've got at the moment, I think.
Maybe. It is actually. I was surprised. I actually sort of surprised. A different color, mind. This is young Dominic in, I would say about 1978. That makes me really old. So I was sort of thinking, well, what's next? And the thing is that, as I was saying before, I always studied things I was interested in at school. I loved languages. I spent a lot of time in France when I was a kid. I loved geography. I loved different things. So I was very curious. I was never too stressed about necessarily being one particular thing or being in a rush. I was curious about what was going to happen in the future. And I wanted to work hard, and I wanted to make sure that I was always picking up valuable experience. But I knew that life would have sort of a few winding turns. And we speak to a lot of people at TalkTalk that, you know, have come to TalkTalk from different careers. It's more and more common now that people pick up different things along the way. So there were lots of things that happened, you know, after this. So what did I do? I did languages at uni. So I was actually, if you flip through to the next slide, I think it has all the pictures of what I've done. I was an English teacher in Rome because I studied Italian, and I had a Vespa and a Roma football scarf and a denim jacket and long hair, and I was riding around Rome on a little moped. So yeah, so that was good. That was fun. I worked in brand management, in marketing. I was a journalist for the BBC. I was a consultant, a comms consultant. So I was helping companies decide, you know, what they were going to say, always going into a different company every week. And now I'm head of comms at TalkTalk. And the thing is that they all have, you sort of think, oh goodness, that's something, you know, when you arrive at a new company at a new day for the first day, or you change career, and I've changed careers about 3 times. You sort of think, well, that's a very big change. But then when you're sitting here now, and I'm 46 years old now, and I'm looking back over what I've done, I can always see what I might call the red thread in all of those things, all of the things that were in common. I could think, well, I can actually see why I did those and why I might have been quite good at all of those. And, you know, these are all about simple communicating skills. What's the message? What does your audience want to hear? Deliver it to them in a fun, engaging way. So that's journalism. That's teaching English in Italy or wherever. That's brand management, it's marketing. Being a consultant and being head of comms at TalkTalk. It's all about simple communication and engaging communication. So that's the point I was making a few minutes ago, is think about what you like, what you're good at, what gets you out of bed in the morning, and have a think about where those skills are applicable. Yeah. And for example, if you're a really good, clear communicator, you might make a really good doctor, because being able to communicate clearly about medical issues is a fantastic part of that job. So don't think, don't pigeonhole yourself into things, because you can always do lots of different things.
As well as that kind of communication skill, what was another transferable skill that you have used across kind of your very varied career?
Curiosity.
Okay.
Be relentlessly curious. I'm that guy that whenever someone starts talking about something at the table, at tea or dinner or whatever, and someone says, "Oh, I can't remember the answer," I whack out my phone, I go on Wikipedia, I find out. Always. I always want to know. I always want to push it further, build my knowledge. I think curiosity is hugely important, especially if there's like a problem in my company, or if there's an issue, whatever, or being a journalist. Just going that extra mile to find out what the truth is a hugely important thing. Don't be half-baked. Curiosity is vitally important.
So curiosity and communication is what we need to kind of instill from day one, definitely. So kind of going on to your kind of career highlights, so I know that little boy with the long hair could have never imagined all of this. And so we have a few images here that you hopefully can kind of talk more about it, specifically Maggie Thatcher and Pope Francis. I'd love to hear about how these were your career highlights.
So I was presenting on 5 Live. I used to just fill in and do the main shows as well. So I would be presenting for the whole 2 hours on all sorts of general news, not just business news. Mm-hmm. And I was happened to be presenting. I think it was only my 2nd or 3rd shift doing the whole 2-hour show. It's always a big step up, to doing a 5-minute business report, to doing a 2-hour breaking news show that with anything can happen, from sport to politics to international news to whatever. And 12:47 on the 12 till 2 show, I remember the time, there was a flash that Mrs. Thatcher had died. Now, for a certain generation of people, my generation, people are older than me, people are slightly younger, this was a massive, massive story, because she was a hugely divisive but hugely important politician in our country's recent history. You know, really kind of, you either loved or you hated her. And it news broke, and no one could confirm it for 5 minutes. So what happened was that I was a little bit inexperienced at that, so I ran out of stuff to say after 2 or 3 minutes, and we were having the Monday morning football chat on Monday afternoon, so I went back to the football and got told off, because then 2 minutes later, then I went back to Mrs. Thatcher dying, and then that would have been the news for like hours or days, just constantly. But that's something I'll never forget. I probably got my first few grey hairs during that program.
Imagine. And you kind of like, you're in history then, because a lot of people say, oh, can you remember where you were when kind of this person died, or can you remember when this person kind of was born? And you always kind of go back to that, where were you in that time? And you were kind of reporting on that news at that time.
Yeah.
So it's a piece of history. Exactly. And could you tell me about Pope Francis?
So because I did Italian, even at university, I could speak Italian. Because even though I was a business reporter, when you may remember in 2013, there was a pope called Pope Benedict. Now, he did something which no one had done for hundreds of years, which was he resigned. And popes aren't supposed to resign. So this was supposed to be a job for life. And so I went out there and covered this resignation. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, I went back and covered the election of the Pope, the new Pope. So this is a hugely important thing for the whole Catholic Church and the billions of followers around the world. But the amazing thing about it, it's also a fantastic piece of theatre, because what they do is they don't release press releases about the votes with all the cardinals in their amazing red outfits. What they do is when they have 2 votes a day to choose the new Pope in the Sistine Chapel, one of the most beautiful rooms in the world with all the Michelangelo paintings. And what they do is they put smoke out the chimney. I don't know if you know the story. And when they haven't yet chosen a Pope, they burn a piece of paper that emits black smoke, comes out the chimney. When they've chosen someone, after 3 days, in this particular instance, white smoke comes out. So if you hear the phrase, we hear white smoke, it's because of the system to use to select a Pope. And then what happens is, when white smoke comes out, everyone in Rome thinks, crikey, they've selected a new Pope, and everyone comes into St. Peter's Square. Literally, from very few people, you have 500,000 people in the square within an hour. It's kind of insane. It's remarkable. And so I was there reporting on 5 Live when Pope Francis, who this guy is, who's been in post since 2013, came out onto the balcony. And they say, they announced the immortal word Habemus Papam in Latin, which means we have a Pope. Wow. And he comes out and says hello. And so that was being in a crowd of 500,000 people reporting on this event was quite something. But there were lots of other things. There were sad events, like, being that's the Falkland Islands. I flew out to the Falkland Islands and reported from there when they were having a dispute about squid, believe it or not. Oil, squid and oil. There's lots of squid. They thought there was oil, but there isn't oil. That was what we discovered back in 2012 or 2011. What else have we got up and flashing up on the screen?
Biscuits.
That's chocolate digestives. That was my first job. Was working for McVitie's that made chocolate digestives. So I used to go up to the factory in Ashby-le-Zouch in Leicestershire, where, very ironically, my wife, who's in the other room, was born. I wouldn't know that. And so I did sort of brand management for them. What's the next picture? I can't remember what the next one is. Yeah, that was my Vespa in Rome. Not me, but that's but I had a moped in Rome when I was on my 3rd year of my 4-year course, and I was teaching in a school, and that's the Acropolis in Athens. When I was a business reporter, you may remember the Eurozone economies had lots of defaults, had lots of problems. Greece, Portugal, Italy, Ireland. Had many issues. So I went out to the Eurozone countries a lot and reported on the bailouts and all the political difficulties they were having there. I went to Greece quite a lot. there any more? Yes, and I went to the White House in Washington in my consultancy job, because I worked for a couple of US companies out there, and those were the days before COVID when you could travel and you would fly over to meetings. Not sure that you'd want to do that now for environmental reasons, and because we're all so used to having meetings on video. I think you'll find that a lot of people, a lot of meetings that used to happen in person now don't have to happen. I once went to St. Louis in Missouri to give a 40-minute speech. That's crazy.
It's crazy to think that now, how kind of our opinion and our kind of the reality of us traveling to kind of give those meetings and get to know these people, when we can just do it so quickly over the internet, and we don't need to travel as much. I just wonder whether
I think the reason for that is that I remember, because we've, in a company like TalkTalk, I mean, I just spend my day having meetings. Yeah, so it's like 8, 9, whatever. And that's common when you work in business. And I remember right at the beginning, in March, April last year, it was all quite wooden. People found it a bit difficult. It was like you really missed the that sense of being in the room and opening up and loosening up a bit. And whereas I think after about 4 or 5 months, we actually just got used to talking like this. And I find now that I can have pretty human, open conversations on video that I wouldn't have been able to have 5 or 6 months ago, or 12 months ago, shall we say.
Yeah, completely.
And I think that's what's changed. I think that then that people realize that you can do like a training session now on video. It's fine. As long as people just are relaxed and they open up, it's all good. So I think that's what will mean that there are lots of meetings in person that won't have to happen.
So on to kind of why TalkTalk, why business? I know you've had a very varied career, and it's kind of gone through kind of journalism and communications, and then ended up in this quite large organisation within the business industry. I know obviously you're within campaigns and communications, but why this area?
So I think the thing about business is that it's very, very broad, and it captures an awful lot of different types of people. So in TalkTalk, you can be a real techie, and you can be an artsy type techie or a real techie type techie. You can be a numbers person, you can work in finance, you can love that sort of discipline and of numeracy. You can be a kind of slightly more sort of creative artsy guy like me and work in comms. There's just a vast amount you can do. So the thing about business is you can find one that really suits your values and suits what you want to do in life. So I worked in consultancy. Consultancy is great for 4 years. You just get parachuted into all sorts of different situations. So it's sort of you're sort of like, your eyes are sort of wobbling around the whole time because you're sort of learning something new every day, different situations, and that was fine. But I'm somebody that I really like to align with a purpose, with a common purpose. And I said when someone rang me about this job, it was like, well, broadband in the middle of COVID. Yeah, well, of course, that's really important. I want to work on that goal, on that important thing. So that's a roundabout way of saying in business that business doesn't have to be about making money. It doesn't have to be about wearing a suit or being dull or being boring. There are lots and lots of businesses that sell important products, interesting products, that have great values, that are important in our country's growth, history. So it's just like business is very, very, very broad. But what it does is it's very good for teaching you about rigor and discipline and process and systems. And, it kind of can give a bit of structure to your skills. And actually you can learn how to create things and build things yourself.
Completely, thank you. And so kind of going on to that employability aspect, so I know that myself, students that are watching, UNIT students, the students that I speak to at schools and college, they're always wondering, what are those employers looking for? And I'd love to kind of get your insight on this.
So in sort of comms, but I think it's important in all areas. Yeah. I think it's really important to have these two things. And it's really important to present yourself as having these two things. Mm-hmm. So if I'm interviewing someone, chatting, but also looking at the CV, I really want to see a very well presented CV. So like no typos, formatted really well, maybe a bit of color, just like, yes, that looks really sharp. Because what that shows to me is two things. It shows to me that that person has a certain amount of sort of creativity and ideas. Because maybe if there's a bit of color, maybe the content on the CV, there's some really good things there. I did this, I did that. But it also shows me that that person has organization and process. You have to be able to, there's no point in having good ideas if you can't run a tight ship. Like, am I going to deliver? The most important thing in business is execution, delivering. It's like, it's better to deliver 6 out of 10 than promise 9 out of 10 and don't deliver it. 6 out of 10 that you deliver every day of the week. So you want to be able to show and to be somebody that has a process, that has a kind of a really good to-do list, that creates a document that captures your workflow. If you're the sort of person that writes notes in a book to make sure you do stuff, great. I'm not. I use Google Keep Notes, whatever. Process, systems, reliability. And I'm naturally the ideas and creativity guy. That's kind of where my mum is an editor of books, and I love arts and all of that stuff. So if I'm not careful, I can slip into that whole creative but disorganized world. So what I've forced myself to do is be hopefully creative and communicative and all that, but also have structure and process and organization. And almost no matter what you do and what career you go into, if you can demonstrate that you've got both of those two things, or all of those 4 things, that's a really good place to start.
And how do you enable yourself? So obviously the ideas and the creativity comes really naturally to you, but what are some really handy tips to stay organized and very process driven alongside this? So you mentioned kind of creating to-do lists and using kind of Google Keynote, but what else can our students do?
Be honest about your strengths and weaknesses. First important thing. Swallow your pride. Get rid of your, don't be afraid in recognizing that you may not be naturally the most organized person. So the first thing is, so I'm just talking about myself, so that's me. So the first thing is I recognize that and I do something about it, because I know that it's important in business. So point 1. That's point 2. Start to think about, realize the importance of structure and start to use structure. So I do point 1, point 2. There you go. There's an example of it. Realize the importance of structure, and just teach yourself it, and make sure that you use structure and process in various aspects of your life. If that's not your strength, just make it become a habit. So I've got a to-do list in my personal life and my work life. It wouldn't necessarily be something I would normally do, but I just sort of the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, I do. And it's great because it makes my life easier. So, so that's really important.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I'm definitely one for kind of a to-do list and writing things down as I go, because I think it's really difficult to kind of really pop those thoughts in your head in a very structured way, and actually writing it down works very well for myself, and I know for the students that I speak to it works well for them. So just talking about key skills kind of for business and for communications as well, and kind of talking more generally, I know you mentioned like discipline and the ability to sell and pitch. I was just wondering if you could kind of talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I just think it's really important to know how to sell and persuade. And that is a little bit about flair, about words, cutting through, not being jargony, have a bit of fun, have a smile. But it's also about structure and process. So if you're selling something, what's the problem and what's the solution? Here's where you are, here's where you could be. You know, what's the process? What's the logical coherence of your argument that you're making? You know, are you using repetition? Are you packaging it? Are you doing a conclusion at the end? Are you summarizing? That kind of all of that kind of. So the sort of the ability to sell and pitch is really important. Focus. If you're asked to do 10 things, what's the most important thing to do? And do it first. That's focus. Don't get lost down rabbit holes that are unimportant. Discipline.
In fact, we've got a question that's just come through on the chat from Mariam, and she's asking, how can you discipline yourself strictly? So how do you hold yourself accountable?
How do you do it? The reason where discipline comes from for me is not wanting to make mistakes again. So when I was broadcasting and I made a mistake, 99 times out of 100, it was because I hadn't done my homework. And I guessed, I fluffed, you know, I just sort of fudged it. So actually for me, the discipline was not wanting to look like an idiot and wanting to do a good job. So what I did was I just made sure that whenever I was going on air or I just always did the same approach. It's about repetition. Repetition is not a bad way to think about it.
So have a set kind of way that you kind of prioritize your work. And sometimes if you kind of fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. So having that kind of discipline and being very strict on yourself really kind of ensures that.
It's like, you know, there's a guy called Paul Ince who used to play for United. And he was always the last guy out onto the pitch. That was his routine. That was his pre-match routine. And he always put his shirt on as he was running over the touchline. Really odd.
Yeah.
But that was his discipline. That was his routine. And for someone like myself, who's naturally a little bit left brain, a little bit chaotic, a little bit creative, that having routines and systems was the thing that gave me discipline.
So going on to kind of your top tips, I know we've got a few questions coming in the chat, but I'm going to wait until the end and kind of try and get through them all as quick as we can. But your top tips to work in communications and broadcasting and kind of business, what are they?
So in working comms in the creative industries, I think, and broadcasting, learn how to tell stories creatively using visual and audio media. Now, a lot of you will already be doing this. It's about TikTok, it's about YouTube, it's about all these things. But learn how to catch the eye using color and video and audio. Teach yourself how to be a self-starting content creator. It's really easy. The tools out there now are just so easy to do. And I would do that before you enter the workplace. Because you can always be the person that does creative comms anywhere. Even if it's a widget manufacturer needs to be able to create content about what it does. Yeah, so teach yourself that skill. Learn how to explain. Learn how to learn how to explain something to a 15-year-old or a 12-year-old.
Or a 6-year-old. I think that sometimes even it's difficult to get your point across, and learning how to explain from the beginning is really important.
From the beginning, it's really important. Always start from first principles. It's a great rule when you're talking to somebody about something. I go into countless numbers of meetings where somebody starts from a point which already leaves behind some people in the room because they don't have the base knowledge. Yeah. Always start from first principles, because that means that you've understood it. A lot of the reason why people can't explain things is because they haven't done that back to first principles stuff, which is the hard bit. That's the hard bit. You can't explain without fully understanding something. Be curious. So be that person who checks a fact at the dinner table on Wikipedia. Annoy your mum. Like, little Johnny, why are you looking at your phone? Well, you've just said something interesting, mum, and I wanted to see what other films that director made. Or I wanted to see who else was president at the time, or whatever. You know, just like, shh. Teach yourself to be curious. And teach yourself to judge what's interesting rather than what you think other people think you should find interesting. This is really important. Escape the herd mentality. A lot of people, when they come into journalism, they, for example, or they go into corporate content, they just sort of think, oh, corporate content, a video for a company. That means we have to have lots of shots of people walking across a random bridge in London, and we have to have lots of shots of offices, and we have to have stock shots of people sitting around a table having a meeting, one of whom's white, one of whom's Chinese, one of whom is black, and they're all laughing, looking at a tablet. It's like, really? I've seen those pictures just the whole time. You know, what I mean is, get out of the stereotype content. You know, give me something that comes from you, your own experience. You know, so for example, you know, if you are a young female who's interested in engineering, and you want to put a video full of 10 women engineers, do it. Great. That's different. That'll cut through, and that's your experience. It doesn't have to be all blokes. You know, and it doesn't. And if you want to tell a story that comes, you know, that how's that going to cut through? What's different? Because you can't stand out being the same as everybody else.
Yeah. And I think we actually have loads of questions in the chat, so I think we're going to go straight there.
Do that, yeah, sure.
And go into that. So if I can welcome Izzy, and she's going to talk through kind of the questions that we're receiving in the chat. But I'll start off. Oh, there she is.
Hello, Izzy.
Sorry about that. Hi, Dominic. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for that.
Nice to meet you as well.
Shall I pick up Katie with the questions?
Izzy, tell me who you are. Who are you, Izzy?
Sorry, I'll introduce. So I'm Izzy. I'm the head of student recruitment and admissions at UA92, and I work alongside Katie and the rest of our wonderful team. And we've had some great feedback and some great questions contributed to the chat. So I wondered if now was the time to ask you a couple.
Ask me anything.
Fantastic. So the first question from Ardit is around the new Kickstart roles that TalkTalk have announced. He wonders what departments those roles will be in.
Almost everywhere.
Okay. Brilliant. And will they just find more information about that on your website?
Yeah. So 6-month placements.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be on UC, Universal Credit.
Yeah.
But you can either find out at the local job centres around Salford area, or on our website, on our careers page on our website.
Okay, brilliant. Well, maybe share those in the chat, Katie, if that's okay, so people can see them. Brilliant, thank you.
It's a great scheme. Kickstart's an amazing scheme. It's
a brilliant.
It's a really good thing because it gives you 6 months of invaluable experience.
Edley has asked, what is the most exciting event that you have covered so far in your careers?
As a journalist?
I think so, yeah.
Exciting event. I think being in St. Peter's Square with 500,000 people when the Pope comes out onto the balcony with a sea of 100 cardinals dressed all in red around him.
Yeah.
With the banks of the TV screens behind you. And
what were the main points that you sort of reported in that story? How did you convey that atmosphere and the impact that was having?
Good question. That's you've got to use the sounds around you. Radio is a sound-based media. Sometimes you've got to be quiet. Listen to what's around.
Brilliant.
It's really annoying when reporters talk over the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Famous, there was the famous tennis and cricket commentators from decades ago that used to dare to be quiet for like minutes at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You just wanted to hear what was going on. So that's one of the things. You provide a little bit of color.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that catches your eye. You talk a little bit about that. It just it brings it to life a little bit. It doesn't have to be the obvious thing. Well, there's a man dressed in the balcony in red on a balcony. It's like, well, there's actually someone there who's standing beside me that's got a face that's enraptured, and she's only 10 years old and she's holding a flag, and her mum's, and it's like, well, what's that? Pictures, paint pictures.
Yeah. And at that point, are you always mindful of the sort of your target audiences and who you're communicating with? That, you know, that 6-year-old analogy that you mentioned earlier, you're always trying to be as broad as possible in your commentary, I suppose.
My default mechanism is always go broad,
yeah,
unless it's very specific. So always try and bring as many people in as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I will always assume in a business meeting that there are 5 people that don't understand the basics.
Yeah. Cool.
Because my experience is I've been in lots of meetings where people don't understand the basics.
Yeah, all the time.
I don't.
Ardit has asked, what made you change career paths at each iteration of your career so far?
Boredom.
Okay. Honestly,
No. Sometimes just the ability, the desire to keep learning.
Okay.
To keep discovering what there is in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's a balance, because you don't want to go into, you know, I couldn't become a mathematician. I just don't have the brain.
Yeah.
But, you know, to go into something that I knew I could do, but was different and would involve me learning lots, you know, learning something new. So I've emigrated. I lived in Frankfurt, you know, two or 3 years ago with my company. I've lived in Birmingham, lived in Salford, lived in Brussels. I worked at the BBC. I've always just wanted to. I always think of the law of diminishing returns. You know, if I've done something the same thing for 4 years, what do I gain from doing the same thing for the next 2 years, or what do I gain from doing something else for 2 years and learning something new?
Yeah.
I would say the latter. If you can pull it off, if you can do it, is great.
That relentless curiosity that you mentioned earlier, but at the same time playing to your strengths, then, would you say, rather than just going off in all
You've got it. You've got it. A mixture of those two things. Absolutely, a mixture of those two things.
You spoke very candidly earlier around CVs and what you like to see, and it's probably a couple of questions, and I'm going to read 2 questions back to back, if that's okay, because you'll be able to answer them in one. So Kerry Will has asked, what is your advice on how to design a CV? Is there a set format you like, and what should it include? And we've had another question from Edley, who's asked on behalf of the students at John Ruskin College if you could possibly maybe share a good example of a CV. Not right now, we can share one later on, or just talk through the chronology of what you want to see.
I'm quite happy with relatively standard CVs in terms of. I don't think you have to go crazy in terms of do videos and stuff. Although it's pretty cool, and if you want to submit one with the CV, So I think it is, you know, it's good to see a little bit of education, a bit of work, but you know, placements. I really want to see placements.
Okay.
Even if you help out as a volunteer, really important. I want to know what you stand for. I want to know what sets you apart, what makes you different, what your passions are. But I can't stress this enough. I also want you to present it really well. No typos, structure, underlines, bolds, italics, bullet points where necessary. I hired someone recently so I had 9 CVs, and it was interesting. It was telling that I think the 2 best candidates also had used a sort of color template. Okay,
they're eye-catching.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, that's nice. It's just nice. It's just like,
Yeah. And building on that, my tip around, sometimes when you're looking at something over and over again, you become a bit wedded to it, don't you? And you struggle to see maybe the small errors or mistakes or the ways in which your formatting could be better or enhanced. So sending it to your peers, your friends, or your family to have another look over would be
who's the best, and also choose the best person at that. So if you've got a friend that you know is really good at that, give it to them. And again, I sort of said, lose the pride. You know, I think it's a really good idea to take ego out of the equation whenever you can.
Yeah.
So if, you know, I always have a 4 eyes principle. I almost always try to give whatever I work on to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got 23 years experience. I'll give it to somebody with 2 years experience. No, I say, do you understand it?
Yeah.
And give them absolute carte blanche to say, no, sorry, you're talking absolute rubbish.
Yeah, and maybe give you a different perspective as well at times.
Absolutely, always different perspectives. Doesn't matter, you know. So just so lose the pride. Get other people involved. Get other perspectives. So if you've got like anyone in the audience here, if you've got like an aunt or uncle that works in business that that is the person in your family that's got their stuff together. send them that and say, I'm really open to feedback. Be honest with me. Don't be shy. Don't be proud. Don't be proud about it.
Yeah, but I think it's safe to say that the primary thing that distinguishes a really good CV from the rest is that attention to detail, I suppose, and that a little bit of creativity in the vision.
Attention to detail, creativity, evidence that you have done something, that you care about something, that you've, that there's something that makes you you.
Yeah.
Really important. And I do want to see that you try to get placements work, even if it's like, my aunt, she let me do her, she let me help out with doing her books, the financials, for 2 weeks. Fantastic. Right, fine.
Yeah, we talk about something called a paper round gene, which is even your earliest experience. Mine was as a stable hand. That's really valid experience. It demonstrates, your commitment to something at an early age, and even that it bodes well on CVs in my experience. So great question. Thank you, Kerry, and thank you, Edla, for that. I have a question built on some of these answers. Away from the CV and the technical skills, what cultural and characteristic skills are you? Character traits are you looking for at TalkTalk? Do you have a certain culture that you hire for, or?
Kindness.
Kindness, okay.
It's really important. And I think it's really important in the modern day business world.
Okay.
Because we're very open. If you annoy an employee, that can be on Twitter within minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to be kind and do the right thing.
Okay, brilliant.
That's absolutely vital. You also have at TalkTalk, and I think it's common in many other places, you have to be allowed to be whoever you are.
Yeah.
So if I'm white and male, I'm straight, that's great. If I'm gay and I'm black and I'm a woman, that's great. If I'm coming into this company as a 50-year-old, that's fine. If I'm coming into this company as a 20-year-old, that's also fine.
Yeah.
So it's just like we are whoever we are, and that's cool. And we have a very strong Pride network. We have a very strong female empowerment network. Some of whom are co-chaired by men, for example. So it's a very, very important aspect of who we are, is that we are. It is okay to be yourself, whoever that is.
Yeah, so a culture of inclusivity and diversity at TalkTalk, but based on kindness and the ability to be comfortable in your own skin, I suppose, which
You're very good at summing things up. I wouldn't disagree with the words you said, Izzy.
I'm not looking for a role at the moment. I'm joking.
You're good at explaining things and summarising things. You could be a journalist.
Oh, maybe my next career. You've inspired me.
You are.
That's my oyster. Building on that, we have a number of people who are joining us at UA92 who are career changers. So COVID's maybe forced a change in direction. And I'm sure that there'll be people on this call today who maybe sat there thinking, what can I do next? Who maybe feel a little anxious, a little concerned about career changing. Now, as a serial career changer, a successful one, did you have any words of wisdom, words of advice to help people work through the motion of how they're feeling at the moment?
So, so this is a little bit pre-digital age, but so from the first, so I'd worked in marketing in my 20s, and I didn't want to be a sort of senior suit by the age of 28, 29, and I saw myself just getting a Ford Mondeo and living in a Barrett home and just like I wanted to try other things. So I sort of thought, I didn't really know what it was. So I worked for an airline at the time, and we had flights to Edinburgh, and I just flew up there and walked along a beach at St Andrews. You know where Chariots of Fire was filmed, the beach where they go
beautiful up there.
Yeah, so I walked down that beach, and took myself out of my normality. I took myself out of my day-to-day situation, which I think is really important. It's a big advice I would give anybody, and just thought. And just walked and just thought about, what do I like and what do I do?
Yeah.
And the second point I want to say is, what was that? And I thought that, what is it that I actually do on a Saturday morning? So if your idea is, I know that things are a bit fragile at moments, and it's great just to have work. I understand.
Yeah.
But I also do think it's important that you'll be at your most employable when you know when you're passionate about something. So I thought, well, what do I do on a Saturday morning when other people might go out and kick a football, other people might go out and do X, Y, Z. I actually read the news. I actually read a newspaper.
Yeah.
And I sort of, well, what do I do after I leave work? And I switched on 5 Live. So I said, well, this is teaching me something here. I'm really interested in news. So what can I take from my marketing job? And, you know, and actually, well, you know, it's about creativity and it's about explaining and communicating. Well, actually, well, maybe there's something there for me.
Yeah.
And then I ended up presenting on the station I used to listen to driving home from work, which was
full circle
quite cute,
moment.
quite cool, yeah.
That's amazing. And also building on that, you touched earlier on your role with LinkedIn as part of TalkTalk. A lot of people don't use LinkedIn as a default platform for building a network, which I found you know, astonishing. It's opened up a lot of opportunities for me myself. How can you encourage people to start using LinkedIn more to build a network and maybe connect with you after today, so they've got you now in the network?
Very happy to.
Yeah.
The thing I would say is, and this is an answer slightly of someone from my generation, so you've got to take it in this way. LinkedIn is the new Facebook.
Yeah.
So what people of my age used to use Facebook for, which was sharing sort of interesting stuff, and actually talking about what's important in their lives, actually people now do on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's true.
When it's very personal with your mates, WhatsApp or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually to sort of the wider world, or sort of a broader community of people share all sorts of stuff on LinkedIn. I read this really interesting piece, or my wife died of cancer and I'm raising money in her memory, or here's a really interesting piece about technology, or here's something about TalkTalk or whatever, or in my world it's like, well, here's a really interesting use of creative content. So actually I would set up a LinkedIn channel and just post about what you're interested in.
Yeah.
That is always, don't be boring.
Yeah.
One piece of advice I can give you, just don't be boring. Don't be boring.
I've always found that sometimes if you're really busy, you're juggling a lot of things, it might be difficult to think of content. So if you found an article you found that resonated with you,
share it. Just say one line saying, I thought this was a really interesting article, the future of AI.
Yeah.
Done.
Pulling out the quote that maybe most resonates to you. Yeah. Yep. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to finish on a high, and I'm going to connect with Dominic whilst we're on the LinkedIn.
Wow.
Whilst we're on LinkedIn, in a bid to encourage other people to do it too. But you have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think Katie's going to join again, and I'm sure this will be the first of many times that Dominic has to now support UA92 in conversations of this.
Very happy to. So whatever you want.
It's lovely to meet you, and thank you for taking the time. I'm sure you're
incredible. Nice one, Izzy.
Thank you.
Cheers.